You're listening to the Wise Women Podcast, episode 13. I'm your host, Alisha Wilford, founder of Yoke and Abundance, a creative leadership coaching business. This podcast is designed to inspire by introducing you to creative women living abundantly. I hope you'll savor Christie's words of wisdom as much as I have. Today's guest, Christie Soper, is the founder of Sunceirge. Sunceirge provides comprehensive travel design and innovative concierge services to help travelers who aspire to new experiences. You might remember that Sunceirge sponsored the very first episode of this podcast because Christie wholeheartedly believes in supporting women in business. Christie and I actually worked at the same company for many, many years and were only acquaintances from working on the same floor in separate departments because we'd occasionally ride the elevator together or pass each other in the halls. It wasn't until we had both set out on our own in business that our mutual passion for entrepreneurship, supporting women-owned businesses, and our mutual love of travel brought us together as friends. I'm excited for you to get to hear from this very wise, caring, and open-hearted entrepreneur after a word from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Triad Local First, a nonprofit membership organization based in Greensboro, North Carolina, with members throughout the Triad. Triad Local First members include independent, locally owned retail shops, real estate agents, insurance brokers, marketing and advertising firms, accountants, dentists, restaurants, farmers, breweries, and more. TFL's mission is a commitment to building a strong local economy and a vibrant, unique community. The Buy Local season begins November 15th with holiday strolls happening November 17th and 24th and December 1st and 8th. For more information on how to support local independent businesses this holiday season and throughout the year, visit www.triadlocalfirst.com/buy-local-season. Christie Soper.
Alisha Wilford.
Thank you so much for being here. Would you mind sharing your age?
My age? What an interesting starter question. And very anti-HR.
It is. But the reason why I do that is because I want people to see it takes all ages.
Absolutely.
But if you're not comfortable, you don't have to.
Oh, no, I have no problem sharing my age. I'm not ashamed or particularly proud either direction, honestly. But I am 45.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And we've known each other for a little while, haven't we?
Yes, few years.
Because we worked at the same place for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really only been in the past couple years that we've really gotten to know each other.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with we were in a space, in a corporate environment where you're kind of focused on your micro universe, and as you step out of that and your focus as an entrepreneur shifts, I think what you begin to focus on and quite frankly push out into the universe starts to attract back. And I think that's how you and I probably, through a shared passion for entrepreneurship, found each other's orbits, quite frankly.
Absolutely. Well, can you share a little bit about your background and how you got from where you are, from where you've been to where you are now?
Oh, yeah, how much time do we have? That's a long story.
Just a little bit.
It's 45 years worth of story
I
there.
know, right?
So I we'll start it from a professional lens. And so I began my career right out of college into financial services. I was a financial advisor, and that was very challenging at age 22 to be young, to be female, to be of minority descent, and trying to get your toehold in an industry that looks quite opposite of that on many fronts, and learned a tremendous amount about the industry as well as about myself. Got a little starter award initially, but it became very clear that I was having more fun helping the other advisors run technology and use that skill set than I was actually, marketing product. So I had an opportunity to go into a bigger headquarter type situation for financial services. And that was the beginning of a 20-year career, long term. And for me, that was also just a gigantic opportunity to build a skill set that 20 years into the future, I had no idea was probably very well designed. I didn't set out with an intention that, oh, I've done marketing, now I must add operations, and now I must add HR, and I must add, digital as it's evolving. It was really much more haphazard. I had some great mentors along the way, and I had some great chances to try new things in environments that were very supportive of it and that organization. And so I leapt into that and took full advantage of just honing so many well-rounded skills that what I realize now put me on a very determined path and discipline toward where I'm meant to be today. And so having been through, an HR and diversity strategy role, and having done about 10 years in IT, and then some time in digital marketing, communication, sales, etc. It all kind of has culminated in the opportunity now, which it doesn't look logical, but when I think back on it, I absolutely can see the fundamentals and the stepping stones that were in place and the core values in action through that. And so I think that's really, I'm on the path I was meant to be on. I just didn't know it 20 years ago. Right. It only became obvious about 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was like you had these pillars that were building the foundation for where you were going.
And I didn't even know it. It was probably almost subconscious, by chasing the passion that I had in that immediate point in time. Over time, it was a long-term commitment to some specific core value needs that I had. And it wasn't until I learned what core values were and what that really meant and how it aligned in my life a couple of years ago that I was able to actually articulate it. And then it was such an earth-shattering aha moment. When I look back, I was like, oh my goodness, all these things had aligned, and I had no idea that's where the path was going.
That's very exciting.
It is. It really is.
Can you tell us about what you are doing now?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the founder and CEO of Sunceirge, and Sunceirge is a travel and concierge services company. We are boutique by design. We will always be boutique by design. We will never compete with Expedia or anything that involves a call center, because quite frankly, we're all about relationships. So over that career, what it taught me that I needed to offer my value in the world, and quite frankly, my mission and my passion is around empowering women and their loved ones who want to have some sort of out-of-the-box diverse experience in the world, who value experience over materialism, and who want to go and immerse themselves in culture that is very different, to learn, to experience, to bring home with them in a life-changing way, as well as creating global citizens, especially when I think about our children and wanting them to see the big macro level of the world and how, our world can't be seen through a device, and having that exposure and awareness that helps them grow, not just through the academic education, but through a worldly education and experience. And then we're also just really focused on generally ensuring that what we're creating is a long-term relationship. We're not transactional. We never want to be that. We're really looking for partner / friend / client that we enjoy each other socially, sometimes even virtually socially, that we understand their needs and their preferences and those of their loved ones and the people they choose to travel with, and that at the end of the day they can call us and we handle things and they can trust us. Because
you've built a long-term relationship with your clients.
That's our goal, absolutely. Yeah. And that over time, we've got just this week, just today, over the last 2 days, we've had, 2 repeat clients on their second trip. We've got others that have traveled, planning their third trip. And, we've only been in business 20 months. So that to me says we're following our passion, our mission, and we're creating value in a differentiating and valuable way.
For me, it's really inspiring to see what you've built over the last 20 months. Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you kind of hit the ground running when you left corporate America, and I mean, you haven't looked back since.
I really haven't. I look at the building on occasion. But it feels, even 20 months later, it feels like a complete other lifetime. And I am so grateful for the opportunities that I had. Sometimes the best experience and sometimes the worst experience are all gifts that put you on the path that you're on. And I don't begrudge anything or anyone, and appreciate that I have the opportunity to live this moment every single day, and to be following a passion that I never ever thought in my wildest dreams would be this amazing.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking.
Certainly. Would you like an animal spirit card?
Sure.
And you've done these with me maybe
a couple times.
Yeah, definitely in the company of women, and then maybe during a random meeting.
Right. It's always very interesting to see what comes out of this.
Yeah.
And then be able to kind of process it for a day or two on reflection and say, okay, I see where this aligns.
Or maybe where it doesn't. I had someone in the other day for a podcast interview, and she said, she's like, well, that just rubs me the wrong way. And it was the best.
Like life, right?
She was like, well, it's really fitting, but that's why it rubs me the wrong way. Okay, if you could put your hands on the cards and take a couple big deep breaths. And whenever you're ready, you'll just cut the deck with your left hand. And flip that guy over.
This one.
Yes. The moth. So the moths are creatures of the air. They are known to see more than others. And the speed at which they move can sometimes leave them a little ungrounded.
But that's fitting.
It is fitting for you. But it's said that there's powerful and discerning qualities with an air card. Just sometimes the speed at which you move can leave you a little ungrounded. I will tell you what the moth itself signifies, and I'll read that to you. It always takes me a second. There we go. Okay, moth. Impulsive, hasty, wistful. The moth is sure the grass is greener on the other side. Moth energy is at play when we're attracted to easy solutions or anything shiny and new. This can lead to unfinished projects, disappointment, or burnout. It's helpful to remind moth personalities that life is complex. No matter the illusion, no one is exempt from the trials and tribulations of this great journey. Practice seeing life as an infinite mystery rather than wishing it was easier or different. When in balance, enthusiastic and whimsical. When out of balance, idealizes others, jittery. To bring into balance, finish a project.
It's interesting.
It is. How does that land for you?
I don't have any, I'm not out of balance, to use that language.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel in balance in that. I don't feel jittery or feel like a frustration or any type of ideology that something is better or greener on another side. I feel like my grass is so green right now, blissfully and blissfully green. I may have some trouble getting it mowed, but it's growing like wildfire.
That's awesome. Yeah, this card does not sound like you at all, and it doesn't sound
And you know me well enough to know that, so I feel okay with that.
And it's interesting because sometimes I say, if it doesn't sound like anything that's going on with you right now, you might encounter someone with that energy.
Oh, have that in front of you, yeah.
Yeah, like someone else might come into your life that's got that kind of energy.
Right. Or someone close to you could be in a place like that.
Absolutely.
Because that energy affects you. It burns into you and takes time to kind of dissipate, I think.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So maybe after the podcast, we'll pull you another card.
And we'll hand that to other people.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, what's one project you're really excited to be working on right now?
Oh, I think it's interesting. So I just hired our Chief of Operations this past Monday. So this week has felt very optimistic around relearning to delegate and to remember how to act as a team, collaborate, teach, take the slower pace to teach rather than cramming and trying to do, oh yeah, we'll cover that later. It's been, I think, using the project loosely, that word, that is really what I'm so excited about right now is the person that we have brought on is just an absolute rock star in her own right. And in a very similar way has decided to step out of her corporate leadership role and step back and find what makes her happy, which is travel, and partnering with me to help grow a business is exciting to her. She's never done anything entrepreneurial, so that's all new. So just looking and tapping the ground for new experiences, and even interestingly, hearing through her lens, someone who knew me before I started the business and then after, and someone who loves to travel but never connected the dots that my business could be of assistance to her. So it's been really fun to explore that because as her eyes have been opening this week, she was like, I was so far off. I had no idea, of what you do and how you do it and the needs that you fill. And so that was like, that's fantastic perspective. I was like, let's bottle that and let's make sure that everything you're experiencing and feeling and observing is what we're addressing as we create our marketing and our messaging and our narrative going forward.
Right, so you can connect that with potential customers and clients. And
yeah, because on paper, she is my target market. Right. She knows so many of the brands that most people don't know that we work with. Does so much research on her own, very analytical, very capable. And so for her to have not connected the dot about the services we provide was a total miss, frankly, through my lens. And so I think it's just such a great cosmic opportunity to now have her on board. And even this week as she's learning, I would say, here's this group of ladies, this is where they're going. What would be a great gift that we could give them as they're departing? And her suggestion was spot on. And so everyone adds value, no matter how close or far they are in the sphere. And that's just in week one. So I am just over the moon, excited about being able to grow this alongside and the teamwork there, and having her operational focus tied into my marketing and relationship focus is going to be amazing.
Absolutely, it will be. A lot of women listen to this podcast who are entrepreneur minded, and maybe they want to become entrepreneurs or are already in the beginning stages of having a business. Some own some businesses already. Can you talk about what it's like to hire and to make the decision as a small business that it's time to bring someone on? And then what? When you recognize, what was the process for you, and how did you know that it was the right time?
That's a great question. So I think there's a lot if you've been in a corporate setting before, HR will really sort of put a lot of parameters in place that dictate so much of that decision making. And when you become an entrepreneur, as with many aspects, that is gone. And you have to forge a new path. And so you have to wear that HR hat for yourself and for your new business. And for me personally, I knew we were ready for help when I was getting overwhelmed with the details that were not able to monetize. So in my world, in my industry, the research, the planning, the relationship building and maintenance, all of that was my passion and my mission. But we are such taskmasters to make sure that everything goes right on someone's travel experience. There is a volume of detail that we handle, and ideally we're handling and the client never even knows it's happening in the background.
Right.
Because that's the bar we set for ourselves. And so when I was getting overwhelmed in that detail and I wasn't able to provide the level of service that I intended to provide, it was a no-brainer. It was time. And I think where the real pinnacle hit was when I realized that I was doing great, but I was going to stagnate. And I was either going to have to invest and put the chips into the middle of the table, or I was not going to grow. And so as scary as both times that we've hired has been to look at a spreadsheet and really lay those numbers out and say, all right, this is what we have to do in revenue in order to justify this. Oh my gosh, I don't sleep the entire week that I make that decision. But in hindsight, I always look back and say, if I had not put that risk out there, I would have never grown into the reward that we have now.
Right.
And every time we've done this, we have been rewarded in growth, in being able to provide the level of service that we want, and being able to add diversity to the bench so that what I'm not strong in, someone else is, and it makes a more robust offering altogether. And taking, quite frankly, some of the stress out of my life that where I could not get benefit, where I can't be productive more than 18 hours in one day. And, you know, it was just time. And it's interesting, particularly in my industry, a lot of people who do what I do I kind of call it professional hobbyists, where they don't want to be any bigger than they are, a one-person shop, and they're not interested in bringing on people. And I think that's important too, because knowing what your mission is and how you want to grow and having goals and strategy in place, that will help you determine, do you need some additional bench strength or don't you? Because there's a lot of ways to solve for that. Maybe you have like your ambassador program for Wise Women Wednesday, where that's not, you know, anybody you're hiring. Those are volunteers who support the mission. So there's always creative ways to get help when you need it, or a personal board of advisors, another great way to get help. But for me, it was about bringing on someone that was part of the mission long term, who wanted to invest, who wanted to grow, who wanted to, you know, come along for the ride, quite frankly. So that was really what went into the decision making. And financially, knowing we were taking some risks, we are right now. I've hired a COO. So, you know, this is a professional. This is not 10 hours of admin work a week. And my intention is, if I hire, I'm going to retain. So making sure that she's cared for and fed and nurtured and is just as vested as I am. Okay, maybe almost as I am.
No one can be as invested as you
it's
are.
always your baby, right? No matter how cute everyone else says it is, it's still your baby. So that's where we are, and that's how we got to the decision to do that, to expand.
Thank you.
Sure.
You know, the next question was going to be, what's one thing that you've done recently that scared you and taken courage, but you're glad you've done?
Oh, all the time. I think that was definitely the big one, because now someone else is in your care. And I don't take that very lightly. That is, to me, quite frankly, as important as our clients are in their experiences, knowing I'm responsible for someone who, has a family to feed, or, has a life and is dependent on the income and the experience, that's a whole nother level for me. I've always taken being a leader or a manager so seriously. And I think, to make that commitment to someone is huge because they've made a commitment to me and to us as an organization. So yeah, I think that is the biggest risk, quite frankly, that you
Absolutely.
can take on.
Yeah. I know that you're doing the work you most want to be doing. So for me, I think I'm really curious about what your long-term vision is for your business.
Ooh, that's a good one. I think when I map this out, when I can't sleep from 2 to 4, I do a lot of strategy, self-talk in the middle of the night. I think for me, it's really about continuing to grow our relationships in a very strategic way. We're never going to be all things to all people. We're never going to chase a transaction. We're very focused on style and fit, and knowing that the clients we work with, who are extension of our family through Sunceirge, are the folks that we're meant to work with. And I think that's our growth focus, and being very clear in that vision and mission and articulating it, and identifying it and calling it out when it's right and when it's not.
Right.
And I think continuing to honor that is part of the growth strategy. And as we add a handful of more people, ideally, that we're continuing to follow that mission. So I never see us being larger than maybe a 10-person firm because we want to keep it intimate and relational. But what I do see as another growth avenue is creating more opportunities to help people who do what I do. So other travel advisors who maybe haven't quite had the opportunities to learn project management, to learn efficiency and continuous improvement, who maybe have not been as quick to embrace technology and the solutions that create those efficiencies. There's a lot of opportunity to peer mentor and to share and to create awareness. And I think that is a really strong B2B opportunity that we want to explore for growth as a business. So how do we create a subsidiary or a sidearm that is growing in that direction in addition to our very strong client focus? Because quite frankly, we have over the last 20 months been able to leverage a lot of technology experience to look at solutions in the marketplace that are supposed to be helping us do what we do. And some are okay, and some are not. And I think because we can look at things through that lens, and we've been able to begin to integrate some solutions and create some efficiencies. That's part of why we've been able to grow as fast as we have on the back end operationally. I would love nothing more to empower other people who love this industry and want to grow their businesses by sharing some of the things that we've been able to create and implement.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Because this is the Wise Women podcast, I'm curious when you've personally felt most wise.
Most wise. I thought you were going to say least wise. and I say that almost tongue in cheek because it's the moments when we feel least wise that we probably grow the most.
Absolutely.
And I think days are full of those. I think maybe most wise would be in that arena where being grateful for the corporate experience and my educational background and having had the opportunity to do entrepreneurship in corporate. So co-founding the Women's Leadership Group for my last company, which started out in its first 5 years was 0 funding from the company and grew over multiple cities. And when I left, I think had over 1,000 members from the company, so employees who were part of that women's leadership group. You know, I didn't get paid 1 cent more for that. And I didn't, in fact, I had one boss one time who told me to take my mention of that work out of my annual performance review because it wasn't a business goal, because it was volunteer work. But in my heart, I knew it was the right thing to do. And so along my life and in my career, I've always chased what in my heart and in my mind and in my spirit, my passion led me to do, not necessarily what the box was trying to keep me in. And so I think when I'm wisest is when I trust my instinct and I follow it. And I have never regretted following my instincts.
Right.
And you know, I think when I'm least wise is when I've done that, is when I put a mission, a path in place, and for whatever reason, I am influenced to fall off of it or not stay on it, and you know, make an exception.
Right.
Heavens, the word exception has gotten me into more trouble where I
this
know.
one time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you live to regret it.
Right.
I mean, man, do you live to regret it. So I think that's when you feel the least wise, and you almost can see it coming, and you're like, I know exactly where I fell off that path and exactly where I shouldn't have, and I'm paying the price right now, but I'm committed. I'll see it through, but I'm gonna learn. You know?
Yes. Along those lines, I mean, you mentioned that the not feeling wise is where we have the most room to grow. If you were talking to a woman that was doubting her own wisdom, what would you tell her?
You know, it's interesting. I've actually had this conversation recently with someone, and I really reinforced the whole you have to follow your instinct. Someone has recently started a business. It was a conversation I had actually yesterday, and the business was started in December, and she had left her full-time to do this. And I was hearing that sort of same, you know, questionable, almost daily, did I make the right decision? Should I go back into corporate? Should I keep pursuing this? And I said, you've got to follow your instincts, and you've got to push that stuff aside. It's natural for it to pop up, but if you got this far, you've already made the hardest leap.
Absolutely.
Which was the commitment.
And everything else is just the noise.
It is. And I told her, because of her specific business, I said, I'm fascinated by the mission and the path that women have evolved along that has prevented them from being able to jump off and do something like this, either as a transition or start out in it, right into their careers. Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
No.
However, we seem as women to have a harder time pushing through whatever it is that's holding us back. And sometimes if you throw Maslow's hierarchy out there, it's as simple as I need the income to feed myself, my family, etc.
Right.
And that's completely reasonable.
Right. Totally valid.
But sometimes if we dig a little bit further, we can say, and if I had all the money in the world, what's holding me back? Is it my doubt in my ability? Is it my fear of failure? Is it my lack of confidence? Is it, you know, my lack of knowledge around what I'll be doing, or being overwhelmed, or I don't handle stress well, or whatever is going on? I think it really is just a fascinating study of what women have going on, working with the right coach to be honest about it,
right,
and not, you know, skirting it or throwing it under the rug and acting like it's not really there. Because it took me 6 years once I finally sort of knew I'd had enough, but would not change my course. And then the last of that 6 years, a few more cuts happened for me emotionally and professionally, and I just decided I needed to move forward, even if it was just starting to commit to working with a coach who could peel back an onion layer or two. And by the time I was done with her, after 5 or 6 months, it was painful and I didn't like it. And I pushed back on her a couple of times because it was just that painful, because we don't like to focus on ourselves as women and
our problems.
And our problems and our scars and our fears. And that's exactly what you have to do in order to create the foundation to reshape it into something that can springboard you. And that's what we did, God bless her. And that's how I decided to follow my mission, because I gotta tell you, my work with her helped me develop my core values. And I've told you this before, where she said, most people end up with 5 core values. And I said, well, I'm a classic overachiever and I got 10.
Yes.
And what I realized was that 9 out of the 10 were out of alignment in my corporate setting. And I tell you what, when you figure that and you have that aha moment and you have the words now to articulate what's been going on in the pit of your stomach for a long time, I dare you to try to sit on that now and not, find a way to move forward in some capacity.
Absolutely.
And not everybody has to quit a day job and go do this.
No.
There are so many creative ways, but just committing one step at a time, that's the key. And on those days you're down, find a friend, find a yoga pose, find a glass of wine, whatever it takes to kind of get you through that day, because tomorrow it's going to be better.
Yep.
It's all new. That's exactly right.
I love that. Thank you.
I threw yoga in for you.
Yeah. And well, you know how much I believe in core values.
Absolutely.
And
I do too.
It's something that I work with all my clients on as well, because
it's critical.
It's the foundation.
It really is. And what I love about it is that it transcends spirituality, it transcends religion, it transcends education, it transcends everything that goes into who we are. And it brings it all down to the micro level of why we exist and how, not even how we got here, but just how we have to factor and honor these core things that we exist around, and whatever we're going to do as we move forward, or it's going to be inauthentic and it's going to be dishonest and it's going to feel off every single step of the way.
It really gets to the heart of your identity, your purpose, and your meaning.
Exactly. Thank you. Those are the words.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Core values always, I think, come back to identity, purpose, and meaning. And when you're out of alignment with that, the only thing available to you is unhappiness.
And why would we walk around with a broken arm and not fix it?
Right.
So why do we walk around knowing something's off and not fix it? I think if I had a semblance of a regret, it's that I didn't pair up with a coach and peel back those layers sooner. Mm-hmm. But I also have 4 kids, and I had reasons that kept me where it kept me. And I know a lot of people go through that. Yeah. And the timing isn't always right. But when the timing could be right, and we owe it to ourselves to explore it.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go back in time and sit yourself down as a high schooler, graduating from high school, or a college student, do you have any advice that you could share?
Tons.
What would you tell yourself?
I try to tell it to my youngest now, who is a rising senior in high school, and we'll see if it sticks. There's so many things in relationships. Not rushing into decisions is the number one, and not letting influential factors force you into relationship decisions that aren't right.
Right.
Whether it's, family or religion or, peer pressure, whether it's getting married or not getting married, or having a child, not having a child. Whatever the honest path is for someone is their own path, and we all must respect that.
Right.
Underline must. And I think if I have the opportunity to be a voice for those who don't have one, then that I think is the number one, is enabling people to have an authentic path and live it. So I think that's one advice. I think another would be that core value, that passion, living a life of passion and connecting it to purpose is just critical to fulfillment. And, you know, your passion today may not be your passion in a year or 3 or 5 or 10. And so being honest and listening to those internal cues as to when, all right, maybe it's time for a left turn in this life, then, you know, honoring that I think is really super important. I also believe that community is the most critical element to peace and success, however you define success. And I think people should be very open to defining success in terms of significance and how we're going to create significance in the world. Not just that I've met some self-imposed standard bar of success based on someone else's traditional definition.
Right.
Be it money, be it title, be it my white picket fence and 2 children, whatever. I think everyone is entitled to define success through how they want to contribute in the world and tying that back to the legacy of and being significant in it. And I think that's what we should all be chasing, is our significance and how we're going to create it in the world. And we should just drop the word success out of our vocabularies altogether.
Smart. Very, very smart. Is there a motto or piece of advice that you enjoy or would want to share?
I think the one that always leaps into my mind when I hear that is so simplistic. And of all, you know, there's really 2 twists on it. One is work hard, play hard. Not just work hard. And of course, not just play hard. There has to be some equity in that equation. Yes. When I chase my passion and my drive is running full force ahead, I tend to overdo, you know, my work hard, and I really purposefully want to step back and try to step back and play hard as well, because I feel like if you're working hard and you're playing hard, then you are living that authentic life.
Yes.
Whatever it is, and you're engaged as opposed to passive in it. So I think that's really important. And funny enough, I'm trying to remember the other twist, the one quote that was coming to mind. Living a life that's worth living, to me, and it's a line out of a Jimmy Buffett song, of all things in the world. But ever since I've heard that, I was like, yes. I don't listen to a lot of Buffett anymore. I've passed that phase. But there was that one line that always stuck with me.
That's so beautiful.
It's worth living, then live it, right?
Yeah.
And make sure it's worth living. That's why we're here.
For you.
Exactly.
Yeah. You are such a creative person.
Oh, thank you.
In so many different ways, and especially in the way I think that you approach your work with clients. But I'm curious, we all have those days when we don't want to do it. Like our most favorite thing in the world, we might want to do it. So what keeps you creating when you just don't feel like it?
Well, great question. I think the creativity is the most important element to why we have to get out of bed and why we do this. If we ever feel like we're settling, the creativity is going to stagnate. I think I keep that kind of in the back of my brain, and I listen to it, because if there are moments I don't want to create, then I know I'm engaged in something that's wrong for me. That's when you know you must find help, whether it is hiring or whether it is seeing someone and talking it through. So I really try to honor my creativity by listening to when I'm not, and then making sure that I'm back on track with that and doing the things that I love, where the creative is just so natural. I think the last time recently that I was extremely creative with a client was they had something in mind. They were going to a location for a business meeting, and they were like, and I've got 2 days before I have to be back, before there's a business obligation, and I want to, see this. What are your best ideas, etc., for 2 days? And I was like, you're going to one of the most amazing places that you could go and visit, and it's a gorgeous destination. Can you take more days on the front end before that business obligation, so that you're already paying the ticket, or someone is, to get you there. Now let's go really enjoy this experience before perhaps you have to go in. And she was like, I hadn't even thought about that. I should do that. I'm going to talk to my partner and see if we can do that. And then within an hour, I had a text going, we're both in. We want to spend this extended time there and really enjoy this. So sometimes it's just a matter of chatting with someone and getting a sense of, what do they think the parameters are, and then being a little bit of a guide through, okay, here's a way we can be creative around this.
Right.
We've had people go somewhere and they go, gosh, I wish I had known this other destination was only 2 hours away by train. If I had known that, I would have gone there. And that really stuck with me when I had a new client and she was talking about a trip she had planned on her own before. And so one of the first things we'll do is, when we start talking about a destination or an experience, is really go to something spatial like the map, to kind of really look at the radius and go, oh yeah, here are all these ways to connect and opportunities that we can explore, etc. So we really try to bring aspects of value to a discussion that someone may not already have in their arsenal, because we do this professionally for a living. Right. And I'll have nights where words are bouncing around in my sleep, and I wake up and the words, are just pounding out of my brain. And it's like, I have to sit down right now and write whatever this is and get it out of my head. Right. Because this is something that is coming out one way or the other. And it's such a zone that I fall into, and then I'm writing it. And then it's so evident at the end. That happened recently when we made an offer on a house. And I had all these words in my head when the offer was still on the table and we were waiting to hear if we got the house. And I woke up that next morning and I was like, these words are coming out. And I sat down for an hour at my laptop, and what it became was a letter to the existing owner of the home, just expressing, everything that we felt and why this was such an important home, not house, home. We could already feel it. There were so many little things that cosmically, like, the stemware that she had on display was my exact same stemware that is rare to find from Germany. And some books that she had out, because she was an artist, were favorites of my husband, who also has painted in the past. Just all these things walking through here that said, okay, we're looking at the walls and we're looking at the structure and we're looking at, the location, but we're also just getting such a strong vibe around what's in this home that's pulling us in, that we just knew it was home. We knew this was where we're supposed to be. So sometimes the universe just has a way of gravitating into your world, what needs to be there, right, and fills you with that creativity, to get you where you need to be in it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christie, I'm curious, is there anything else you want to share?
I think what I would share, you've got me thinking a lot about the people who are listening and empathizing with their path and where they might be right now. And the one thing I always want people to know is that, yes, I'm very confident in my path right now, but I wasn't always. And so if I sound like I have it all together, wait till next week when, if that freaking volcano in Hawaii doesn't stop vomiting lava and throwing off my Hawaii trips for clients, or whatever it is going on in the world that creates stress, etc. Nobody has it together all the time, 100%. And that you must lean into vulnerability in order for it to be a productive experience. And if we run from it, and if we act like it doesn't exist, and we always act like we have it together 100% of the time, and we don't let our guard down, and we don't ask for help or questions, or just put it out there, the people who impress me most are the ones who are the most vulnerable. And we help each other, and I adore that. And if you need help, call me, email me. I'll be there if you want to vent. I'll have a glass of wine with you and give you my 2 cents, or just listen. Because that vulnerability, quite frankly, is how I got here. Embracing my vulnerability, not embracing my confidence. So that's what I would leave people with to think about.
Yeah, that's very powerful.
Well, thank you. It's from the heart.
2 other questions. So there's a question A and a question B to the next question. Do you practice yoga? I don't know.
I don't.
Yeah.
I tried it and it wasn't for me. I am a dancer at heart, have always been a dancer from, since I was 5. And so that's just my jam.
So instead of asking you what your favorite yoga pose is, what's your favorite song to dance to?
Oh my gosh, that is so hard. That's like picking a favorite child.
What's firing you up musically right now?
Right now, I have a convertible, and it is more than just putting a top down and having that mechanical capability. It is truly a righteous moment for me to let go, because I can't be on a device. I can't talk to anyone because I can't hear, and I can't text because I'll die. So it is this moment where I unplug with the top down, and I want to crank my Bose speakers as loud as they'll go. And so I love amazing driving music to just let my hair blow, put my shades on, and enjoy that ride. And so the music I'm loving right now is all my old hair band 80s music. So if a Def Leppard song comes on, it's on. Whitesnake, put it out there. Cinderella, oh my gosh, yes.
I love
Winger, throw any of the hair bands at me. Obviously, I'm showing my age, which I've already disclosed, so it doesn't matter. But
in my non-HR compliant question.
to boot. So yeah, any kind of hair band metal that I can just rock out to in a convertible.
Love it.
That's where I am right now.
Thank you. And the last question is, how do you live a life of abundance?
Oh, that's such a good question. So the whole lens of abundance and scarcity is so core in my heart right now, because there have been times in my life where I was in a place of scarcity, where I was envious, where I was forlorn, if I was wistful, where I was unhappy. And when I realized that so many of those factors are really because of an insecurity, or a lack of awareness, or being true to myself. And then I figured out that by moving my mindset to abundance, to saying that what's happening over there doesn't have to impact me, or what's happening over there is about them, not about me. And whatever issues they must have go on, that is coming out my direction. Or understanding myself and respecting, quite frankly, myself enough to say I deserve a life of abundance, and I don't deserve to be living in fear or living a life that I made a commitment to, even though I know it's wrong now. And so, and not letting some of societal pressures hold me back.
Right.
And making a stance when I need to and letting it go sometimes. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, Kenny Rogers, right? Know when it's worth it and know when it's not. And then being true to that has been my path to abundance. And my world in 2 years has been revolutionized. So once I realized that, once I got away from a lot of the influences that made me feel insecure and made me feel small and unworthy, once I put myself in a place where I'm surrounded by community and support and passion and fellow people who want to help each other and cheer each other on, and that's all that I allow in my world, I am thriving and I am living a life of abundance just by virtue of committing to it and creating and positioning in a community that supports it. So that's how I got here. That's what abundance is to me.
Awesome. Christy, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure in your beautiful cottage.
My Buddha bungalow. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you were inspired by Christie's words of wisdom. If you've enjoyed this podcast, head over to iTunes, give us a review, and then remember, sharing is caring. So please share this podcast with a friend that could use a dose of inspiration and wisdom. When you share this podcast, it makes it possible for us to keep bringing wise words your way. Check out our website, yokeandabundance.com, for more words of wisdom, creativity tips, and information about my group and individual coaching programs. A huge thank you to our sponsor, Triad Local First, and my wonderful editor and producer, Ira Sterling at Julia Sound Recordings. Remember, every one of us has wisdom within. Keep sharing your words of wisdom because you never know who you'll inspire.